Our next speaker is Amit Seta. He's a postdoctoral fellow at the Australian National University, and he's interested in cosmic rays, interstellar intergalactic magnetic fields, dynamo theory, star formation, radio astronomy, and high performance computing. And today he's going to talk about the saturation mechanism of the fluctuation dynamo. So thank you, Amit.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Thanks for the kind introduction. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for making me part of the program and this opportunity to talk about my work. So I'm a postdoc at ANU, and this work has been done with Christoph Vetrath, who is here, and some of it is also during my PhD at Newcastle University with Paul Bushby, Anwar Shukro, and Toby Wood. And today I'm planning to talk to you about saturation mechanism of the fluctuation dynamo. Basically, this is talking about small scale magnetic fields in various astrophysical objects. What I'll be talking about is a bit general, but just for the context, I'll put astrophysical motivation very first. So to this audience, introduction is just for completeness. So first I'll talk about magnetic field in various astrophysical systems. Then I'll go to the small scale magnetic fields, which will be the focus of the talk. And the small scale dynamo theory, give a one slide brief introduction of dynamo theory in general. Then I'll very soon move to small scale dynamos and talk about intermittent magnetic fields and discuss what it is. Sorry. And then I'll come to my problem of interest and some results and some conclusion. So to be very generic, the magnetic fields are at various scales and at various strengths. What we first see in our labs, in physics lab, is a bar magnet, and if you sprinkle iron around it, they take this shape around it. Sorry, and these are magnetic field lines. Now this is I've roughly put a number here, 10 to the power something centimeter and 10 to the power something microgauss. This is roughly the strength, and this is roughly at that scale. If you go to slightly higher scales, even the Earth has magnetic field. It's very well known, and even suns, or more generally stars, also have magnetic fields. So this is at a much larger scales than our lab, and the magnetic field can be much stronger or weaker depending on the region. Like close to sunspots, this can really be very strong. And in fact, Earth's magnetic field is very useful because it saves us from this relativistic particles which are released from sun, and there is sun-earth connection, and it has interesting aspects to it. Even larger scales are magnetic field in spiral galaxies. So these are like parsec scales. So this is 10 to the power 21 centimeter. The observed magnetic fields in this region at this scales is around microgauss. What I'm showing here is a nearby galaxy called M51. The background image is the HST in both it's the same galaxy. It's in both these plots. And this wiggly nature which you see here, or this drapery nature, is the field strength obtained from this far infrared or radio polarization. Basically here the observations are mostly probing the cold dense medium, and here it is probing more the hot and warm and diffuse medium of the interstellar medium. The interstellar medium is basically stuff between stars. So these are with some observation, but the magnetic fields are also at this scales. And to be more precise, though I'm only showing spiral galaxy, magnetic fields can also be present in elliptical galaxies, though they are found to be much weaker than in spirals. Even going higher, what I'm showing here is a radio image of a galaxy cluster, C, which is as huge scales, like it's a megaparsec scale structure. It's one of the largest gravitationally bound structure in the universe. But the magnetic field is also observed here. It's much weaker than in the galaxies. This is the COMA cluster, in the diffuse medium, the COMA structure. This is something which is called relic, but these are all part of cluster, and the magnetic field is also seen here. So the basic idea is magnetic field is observed at various scales and various strength throughout almost all astrophysical objects we have seen. And turbulence is also found in most astrophysical objects. And this turbulence talks to magnetic field. So to be more specific again, in Sun, the turbulence is driven by convection. In galaxy, by supernova explosion or some stellar feedback. These are just some of the mechanisms. And in galactic clusters, by mergers and wakes. And observationally, there are observations to prove magnetic fields in each case. And in Sun, the magnetic field is using magnetogram. And if you see, one can see image of quiet region of solar photosphere Hinode. Some of the images were also shown in the previous talks, very nice images. In galaxy, there are some ways one can estimate magnetic fields, especially the small scale. These are called depolarization measurements. And in galaxy cluster also, there are some other observations, which are Faraday rotation measure fluctuations, especially. So I'm just putting just one of the many ways one can measure magnetic fields in these objects. And what I've put here is mostly for the small scale fields. So based on this observational structure of magnetic field, in many of these astrophysical objects, magnetic field can be divided into, based on spatial and temporal scales, into small and large scale field. For example, to give you an example of Sun, the 11-year cycle is more related with the large scale dynamo and the large scale field of the magnetic field. But if you take a quiet region, if you take a small region of solar stratosphere, it is mostly a mess. Now this mess is basically small scale field. So, and such, there are the probes of small scale field at galaxy scale, at galaxy cluster scales. And the small scale field and the small scale dynamo is going to be the focus of this talk. To just give you a brief introduction of dynamo theory, so the basic question then arises, okay, observationally you see magnetic fields at these scales, but the question is, what is the physical mechanism by which the magnetic field is generated or at least maintained in these objects? And this theory is known as the dynamo theory. And simply it is the conversion of kinetic energy of turbulence to magnetic energy. Now turbulence is prevalent in all of these astrophysical objects. And the physical mechanism by which this turbulent kinetic energy is converted to magnetic energy is known as dynamo theory. Very simply, if for a non-relativistic plasma, if you use Ampere's law and Ohm's law for a constant resistivity, this is almost textbook stuff, you can come up to this equation, which is called the induction equation, which shows basically the time evolution of magnetic field. And this has two parts, the del cross U cross B, which is the amplification term, and this is the diffusion. The turbulent velocity goes here. So it's more like how magnetic field changes, and this is like credit, debit, or profit loss. And if there is no turbulence, or if there is no flow at all, then this term is zero and the magnetic field would just decay. And if there is the diffusion coefficient is zero, then the magnetic field would just amplify. So this is the induction equation, and generally the turbulent velocity would go here. Now, motivated by these observations, even the dynamo theory is divided into two parts, the mean field or large scale dynamo and the fluctuation or small scale dynamo, where usually the large scale refers to scales greater than the driving scale of turbulence, and usually the small scale refers to the scales less than the driving scale of turbulence. So it's like if you're stirring a coffee, and if the spoon is touching the rim mostly, then the size of cup roughly is the driving scale of turbulence. So that physical scale is used generally to divide between what is small and what is large. Now, this small scale field is generated by random stretching of magnetic field lines by turbulent velocity. So there is this turbulence and the magnetic field lines are attached to it. It randomly stretches. I'll describe it in more detail very soon, but basically this random stretching of magnetic field line is happening, which amplifies the magnetic field itself. This only happens when this magnetic Reynolds number, which is defined as driving scale of turbulence multiplied by some characteristic velocity divided by resistivity, is greater than some critical value. And it turns out that this small scale field generated in this way is spatially intermittent. I'll be using this term a bit, so let me just for completeness again define it. So this intermittency is referred to by various names, by non-Gaussianity, by not volume filling, or by filamentary nature. So if you think of a 1D random sequence as given here, you will see that there are two high peak values, though they come randomly and they are also not correlated. And the rest of numbers are the small scale random noise. So this kind of a random sequence is probably an intermittent sequence. If you think it in terms of 3D, then the three-dimensional magnetic field is something like this. It's like has this filamentary structure. So basically there is weak magnetic field, which is just white here. And then suddenly you get a very strong magnetic filament. And then again you have weak. And this happens randomly. So this is what I refer to as non-Gaussian or intermittent magnetic field. And one could define it in a more concrete statistical way. Suppose if you have a Gaussian random field, what I'm plotting here is just one component of magnetic field normalized by the RMS to the PDF of that. Of course, the mean is 0. So it's totally random. There is no mean component over the region. And if you think of a Gaussian random field, it will soon decay within 2 to 3 sigma. But such an intermittent or spatially non-Gaussian field will have very high values, though its probability will be low. So it comes once in a while, but it's very strong. And that kind of field is present. For Gaussian field, the probability of having such a strong field, which is like 4 times RMS value, is almost 0. So the non-Gaussianity or spatially intermittent nature of the field can also be seen via these long, heavy tails in the distribution. So the small scale field generated by this small scale dynamo is spatially intermittent. Now, what exactly is the mechanism by which the small scale magnetic field is amplified? So this is one of the very famous dynamo models. It's a very simple but very powerful way of understanding this thing. Suppose if you have a magnetic flux tube with surface area A and magnetic field B. If I stretch this flux tube to double the radius, basically the area goes down by 2, but the magnetic field goes up by a factor of 2 because of flux conservation. So for ideal fluids, magnetic flux is conserved. So if the surface area goes down by a factor of 2, the magnetic field goes up by a factor of 2. Now you have this flux tube, you twist onto itself. You twist it in a figure 8 and fold it onto itself and then merge it. So you do get back the same loop, but now it's twice the field. So the first question to ask is, where does this energy come from? This energy comes from when I'm stretching it at this step. I'm putting the energy into system. And if you keep following this algorithm, with each going around the steps, the magnetic field increases by a factor of 2. And if you keep doing this, it will keep amplifying. For n number of steps, it will be 2 to the power n. It's very easy to see. But of course, I can't keep doing this forever, because soon the magnetic field will become very strong and there will be magnetic pressure. So I'll find harder and harder each time I do this stretching step to stretch it, twist, fold, and merge onto itself. So this basically shows us that the magnetic field. So imagine your garden hose pipe. If you do this, it will twist back. It will have a tendency to twist back because it's very similar here. When the magnetic field is strong enough, it will try to twist back. So if the B field is very weak initially, you can go through this loop and amplify fields. But eventually the fields will back react on you because it will become strong enough. And then at some time, this process would stop. So it leads to an amplification of magnetic field and then finally saturation. Of course, what I've shown here is very systematic. And in none of the astrophysical systems I told you, there is steps happening in this systematic way. It always happens in a statistical sense. And this calculation was first analytically shown by Kazantsev in 1968. So the probability of it, so if it is stretching somewhere due to turbulence, it is also de-stretching or like doing the opposite somewhere else. But over a statistical volume, the magnetic field tends to increase. So this is a very pictorial way of explaining the small scale dynamo. For more mathematical way, if you think in a turbulent medium, if you think of two particles nearby with some distance, with some very small distance initially, then dr by dt is ur. But for this difference between two particles, you can show that the difference, the spatial difference between two pair of particles, so the pairwise difference, goes in such a way. It's a very simple thing where I've just used Taylor expansion to expand the velocity of one around another. And for small distances, small initial distances, the separation distance follows this equation. If I start with the induction equation, which I was showing you, again, I take ideal. So if eta goes to 0, you can do some very simple maths and show for incompressible flows. Even the magnetic field follows a very similar equation. It's gradient of u. And it's very well known that in turbulence, the particle separation diverges. So if the velocity behaves in such a way as the particle separation diverges, the magnetic field will also be stretched, because these are connected field lines, right? And this would lead to a B field amplification. So this is just another way of explaining that in a turbulent medium, the magnetic field will be amplified. I mean, this is again, whenever I say turbulence, throughout the talk, when I say turbulence, it's very generic. This is applicable to sun, galaxy, or even laboratory experiments now, where they're trying to look at this small scale dynamo in laser plasma turbulence. So wherever there is turbulence and there is some weak field, this process can in principle happen. So after this introduction, what is the problem of interest? As I said that, what do we expect? We expect that if there is a very weak seed field, like very weak field to start with, this dynamo mechanism will take up energy from turbulence and will amplify magnetic field. This magnetic field amplification can't go forever, because there will be back reaction due to the Lorentz force. The hosepipe picture, the toy picture of hosepipe, will try to unfold itself. And this will lead to some saturation of magnetic field. So you can only grow so much by this mechanism. This is an exponential growth though. And the question we are asking is, what saturates the small scale dynamo? Like, what exactly happens here? The first level answer is that it's Lorentz force. Basically, the B has become strong enough. So V cross B is, so the Lorentz force or magnetic pressure, you can think similar way, is reacting back on the flow. But we are interested, for this talk, we are interested in more details of how exactly it happens. And why is this question important? Because the small scale dynamo governs the small scale structure of magnetic field, which might be very important for particle propagation, because the particles, they just gyrate around the local magnetic field structures. This small scale dynamo is also known to seed the mean field dynamo or the large scale dynamo. This is seen in such a way that the small scale field is very quickly amplified, because it's a faster process. Then it seeds the large scale or mean field dynamo. It is also very relevant in systems when there is no mean field dynamo. So we tried to study this earlier this year, that in elliptical galaxy, what exactly happens is the mean field dynamo is not very active, because the rotation is very weak. So in that case, whatever magnetic field one sees is presumably due to the small scale dynamo. And apart from all this, it's also a very interesting physics problem. It's more oriented towards what exactly, going into details of how this saturates. And the way we do, okay, so I should also tell you that there has been some discussion in literature about how this process happens. If you see this induction equation, which I've showed before, it has two terms, the amplification and diffusion. So this grows, but at that some point it saturates. So dV by dt is 0. So the change can come from here, or combination of both. Some existing models are that the diffusion changes as the field saturates. So the magnetic Reynolds number, basically, which controls the diffusion, decreases. One can also modify this velocity field. So the growing magnetic field changes the velocity field in such a way as to stop itself from growing more. And this can also happen by decreasing the amplification. So the velocity can be changed in two ways. One, what goes here, this might change if Rm is changing, or this might change. Basically, most existing models either associate change with amplification or diffusion. So I've just put two references here, but there are a few of these where either the discussion is about how this term changes or this term changes. And it was mostly done from an analytical or semi-analytical point of view. My plan was to look at it from simulations. So these are basically three-dimensional isothermal, three-dimensional periodic box, isothermal gas simulation driven artificially. Like it's a numerically driven turbulence. So it's not actually convection driven dynamo, or it's not exactly supernova going off as you would expect in galaxies or sun. This is you drive turbulence within a numerical box. You solve this equation. What I'm showing here is basically isothermal equation of state, continuity equation, induction equation, and Navier-Stokes. Basically, in Navier-Stokes, you add a term which drives it. There's a flow. You drive the turbulence with some very weak fields to start with in an isothermal system. I did this with pencil code last year. And this year, I've also extended some studies with the flash code. And this such kind of setup has been used in various previous results. I've just quoted here some of them. By no means this list is exhaustive for different reasons. Like Cattaneo was more for solar, and Favier-Bushby was more for solar. Bhatt Subramanian was more galaxy clusters. Federer was more of galaxies. So for various different motivations, this has been studied. But this exact mechanism by which the fluctuation dynamo saturates is not really known, or is not the debate is not really settled. So so basically we solve this equation using whatever code, either pencil or flash. And there are some decisions one has to take before doing numerical simulation. Now, this might seem too basic for people who do simulations in the audience, but I would just like to say, like when I was in my undergrad and I read the first astrophysics simulation paper I was reading, it almost felt that there is astrology going on with astronomy, because there are so many numbers one has to decide even before starting the simulation. So how should you decide that? And it almost that time felt like magic or astrology, which is going with astronomy. But with some experience, I could tell you that most of this decision are based on concrete physics and the regions of the parameter space you want to probe, or your object of interest. So basically for my simulations, this simulation, I can say you something. So the first thing whenever there is a simulation is how big it should be. You want at least the length scale, which is greater than the driving scale of turbulence. So you can at least have 5 eddies or 10 turbulent eddies to do some statistics. Now, what should be the resolution? The resolution will be controlled by what is the largest diffusion you can handle. What should be the time step? It's the CFL condition, most people in the audience know. And this is a very important step, which is sometimes can be difficult to think of, is how to check, how to check that computer is not doing something on its own. But here we have an expectation that if the theories are right, then you will have an exponential increase and then saturation. And this has been shown by previous simulations also, I must say. And these parameters, what you set, can be reflected back to the physical system you're interested in. So L is basically the system size, or the size you can probe. L0 is the driving scale of turbulence. The Reynolds number, which I was saying, controls the correlation length of velocity, also in some sense magnetic field. The Mach number of the flow which you set just controls how compressible the medium is. The magnetic Reynolds number controls the correlation length of magnetic field and the structure of magnetic field in general. So this is the way I kind of think of before starting the simulations. That helps me set these parameters. So now I'm talking about results of the simulations. They are both with pencil and flash codes for different reasons. And I would show results from roughly the both of them, but not make too much repetition between the two results. So what I'm showing here is the evolution of URMS. Since this is a random quantity, there is no mean. So you go to a second order, which is the RMS. And BRMS, the red line is URMS. So you can see the turbulence is driven in a statistically stationary way. URMS is always roughly the same after the initial bit. The magnetic field first amplifies, like first it decreases because of the initial transient phase, then it amplifies exponentially. The growth rate can be found out. Then the amplification slows down. It's no more exponential. It's probably linear in some of the stages. That's also under discussion now. And then it saturates. So this phase where it grows exponentially is called the kinematic phase. This phase where then there is some transition phase, and then the magnetic field saturates. So there's exponential rise, transition, and then saturation. So we do see what we expected. Now I'll keep referring and our question of interest is what changes from here in comparison to here? Basically, what leads to the saturation of magnetic fields? What leads to the saturation of exponentially growing magnetic fields? But before that, let me show some of the properties of this velocity and magnetic field. So what I'm showing here is the kinetic and magnetic spectra. Since this is a random field or a range of scales, you have kinetic and magnetic spectra, where the red lines are at Mach number 10 is more compressible and blue lines are almost incompressible. You can see k to the power minus 5/3 usual Kolmogorov for at least in some range of k for the incompressible case, and k to the power minus 2, which is more appropriate for Berger's turbulence in compressible case. And this is the magnetic field power spectrum in the kinematic and saturated. So exponentially growing and saturated stage. The first thing to see is for incompressible case, it agrees with some analytical calculation of Cousin says that it's 3/2, but basically magnetic spectra flattens. So there are larger and larger, the power is high at larger scales once it's saturated, not initial. One could also calculate something which is called correlation length, which is calculated in this way. Basically, it is a energy weighted length scale. And this is again for velocity and magnetic field. For velocity at higher Mach number, it roughly remains the same, fluctuating between small value because it's a driven turbulence, right? I'm continuously driving. And for lower Mach number, it does increase a bit. The magnetic fields, on the other hand, start with lower correlation length and increases. I mean, this is all, there are exact numbers to show this, but one can also see it pictorially from pictures. You see, this is the magnetic field in the kinematic stage, and this is saturated. The structures are visibly of smaller size in the kinematic stage as compared to saturated stage. So the magnetic field is more volume filling in the saturated stage. This is just a 3D picture of exactly the same field. You can see this 3D sheet-like structures are longer or are of larger size here. So this is the kinematic stage for lower Mach number. This is the saturated stage. Now here I am showing the kinematic and saturated for high and low Mach number. You can see this. The structures are of larger size here, even visibly, both at lower and higher Mach number. Of course, at higher Mach number, the structures are smaller than at lower Mach numbers because of the compressions. That also affects magnetic fields locally. So the magnetic field is less intermittent in the saturated stage for all Mach numbers that we have shown. I have just shown here too. And again, one can go and do it more thoroughly, use calculating the kurtosis of magnetic field, which is basically saying how heavy this tail is. So again, the red ones are for higher Mach numbers and blue ones are for lower Mach numbers. And the dashed lines are kinematic stage. So in the kinematic stage, the magnetic field is more intermittent than in saturated stage. Here I'm showing the PDF of BX and B, both normalized again. So the magnetic field is never a Gaussian. So if you see, the dashed line is a Gaussian distribution. Is never a Gaussian. It is more non-Gaussian or intermittent for higher Mach numbers than lower Mach numbers. And it is more Gaussian, non-Gaussian and intermittent in the kinematic stage. But it is never a Gaussian field. So you'll always have some structures. Now these structures are filamentary most of the time. Also, this whole process which I showed you doesn't depend on the seed field strength or structure. So whether I start with a uniform field, which is here, or some random field, Gaussian random field, with powers at different scale, it always there is always very similar kinematic and saturated stage in terms of power spectrum, PDFs, everything. This we have shown. So basically, there is no bifurcation. Given it doesn't bifurcate to some another state. Given properties, given the same driving of turbulence, it always goes to this one state. So it doesn't depend on the initial condition structure. I think this is a very good thing. This was also known from some analytics, but only for simpler things. Here we have extended it to higher order movements like kurtosis, PDFs, power spectrum, and etc. So now coming to the question of interest, we know that the magnetic field is more non-Gaussian in the kinematic stage, but now we are interested in what exactly causes the saturation of the dynamo, why it saturates. You see, in the induction equation, Navier-Stokes equation, I'm just repeating here, there are this U and B, also J and B, it happens, U and B are almost saturated here, right? So we were interested, because the magnitude is clear, you can see. We were interested, what could change this? This is the back reaction, I should say. This is the Lorentz-Fourier term, J cross B. So the magnetic field, this is the Navier-Stokes equation, it enters here. So this affects U. And this U again affects B. So the whole problem is nonlinear. So we are interested to look at how U and B angles are correlated. Like, you know, the strength, URMS, BRMS, but what are, how about angle between U and B? Because that is another thing would affect these two terms. These are vector cross products. So what we plot, what I'm showing here is only for low Mach number, but this is also true for a higher Mach number with a different difference between the kinematic and saturated state. So the red one is the kinematic, the blue one is the saturation. This is again PDF of angle of U cross B, cos of U cross B, U and B, which proves U cross B, and cos of J and B. So so cos 1 means more alignment. So the magnetic field is more, U and B are more aligned in the saturated stage, and J and B are also more aligned in the saturated stage. So basically it leads to decrease in induction, but not just amplification decreases, it back reaction also decreases. So magnetic field is less amplified and tends to be more force-free, less affected, it less affects velocity as the magnetic field saturates. So this is one of the reasons why this the dynamo saturates. That the magnetic field is amplified less is also reacts back less on the velocity. And one can work out this from magnetic energy equation, which I'm showing here. This is the rate of stress tensor. It has two terms. So basically I've taken now product, I've taken a dot product of induction equation with B. So it becomes B square. And this again is kinematic and saturated for different cuts. And basically this stretching term, which is the amplification term, decreases in saturation, and the diffusion increases. So as probed by previous mechanism, but both happens now, which I've shown numerically. And the way to check it is by calculating the local value of magnetic Reynolds number. So this is not a global value, this is locally at each point, which tells us, which is just the ratio of these two terms, amplification by diffusion, which tells us that the diffusion is enhanced compared to stretching. So basically, to sum up, this is the saturation mechanism slide. Now we revisit. We does seem RM decreases, at least the local value decreases. We does seem diffusion increases, and we does see that amplification decreases. Also, all of these are quantified in, if you see my paper, by what I mean decrease or increase. But the basic take-home message is both the amplification and diffusion are affected, not only one of them. Most of the previous studies looked at only effect of one of them on the saturation, but both of them are affected by the back reaction of the flow. This is the to conclude, I talked about small scale magnetic fields. The first one I would like to say is that the small scale dynamo generated magnetic fields are always non-Gaussian or spatially intermittent or not volume filling or filamentary. These all terms mean same thing. Then I showed that the magnetic field becomes less intermittent or less non-Gaussian on saturation. This can be quantified in terms of kurtosis or other statistics. And both amplification and diffusion are affected by the growing magnetic field. So no drastic change in either of them is required for saturation. Both does their job. And to be specific, we calculated all of this, that stretching efficiency decreases, but it is always non-zero because there is diffusion going on to counter diffusion. And the diffusion with respect to the amplification is enhanced. And this enhancement is independent of resistivity. More details about this works are in this paper. Most of what I've talked to today is in the first paper, which is in review in Physical Review Fluids, and a paper published last year in Physical Review Fluids. But I've also taken some ideas and plots from these two references. And I'll be happy to take any questions now, or please feel free to mail me or contact me. Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for listening.